Thank you for joining us for the Secure Connections podcast, brought to you by IoTSSA, the Internet of Things Security Services Association. I'm your host, Brian Sherman, Content Director for IoTSSA and Get Channeled. Joining me today to share his insight and expertise in payment security is Ryan Goodman, President and Partner at Connect Booster. Along with his business partners, Ryan guides the day-to-day operations of the B&G team, family of businesses, which specialize in merchant services, point-of-sale solutions, web development and search engine optimization, software development, as well as many other business services. He spends much of his time overseeing and building Connect Booster and helping their MSP partners cost-effectively accept client payments and keep AR in check. It's all about cash flow. Ryan, welcome to the Secure Connections podcast, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me today, Brian.
Well, great. Well, I know you're located in Fargo, which a lot of people are familiar with Fargo, I think, the movie, but there's a lot happening out in Fargo, especially with the Connect Booster team. Can you give us a quick update?
Yeah, Fargo is really a happening place, not only in the startup technology culture, but B&G and Connect Booster itself experiencing a lot of growth. To even the point of being uncomfortable as far as in space. So we're working on a new building, and we've been doubling up in offices. And I'll tell you, the team members are closer and closer becoming family because when you share an office with someone, you get to know them on an intimate level. And we've also learned a lot about headset technology and noise cancellation, trying to keep our sales conversations nice and clean and uninterrupted. But it's been great. It's a great problem to have. We're busting at the seams, but I think the team is very, very excited about the expansion project and the building, and that's now going to be 8 months away or so. So we see a light at the end of the tunnel. We know what we're growing for and some of the benefits that we're going to have here very short in terms of space and continued growth in team members once we have more physical space.
So the growing pains, but it sounds like you have a solution coming, which is great. So congratulations on the growth, and look forward to hearing more too as you move into the new building later this year, or is it be early next year? It sounds like possibly.
Yeah, you know how construction goes. We're shooting for end of 2018 to early 2019 date. The sooner the better, but can't control all of those circumstances. So,
winter in the middle of Fargo moving, that sounds like fun.
Well, if there's anything better you can imagine, we can talk about that.
I'm by Erie, Pennsylvania. We're not doing much better this year, so great. Well, with that being said, let's switch to security. Now, I've heard several security professionals suggest that one of the biggest oversights that businesses make relate to how they manage payments. So what are some of those risks that MSPs need to be focused on?
The biggest thing is really just how they're handling that data. Where does it live once they receive it? Where does it go? How is it being destroyed? Also, if there's ever an issue with that data, there's a lot of egg on your face as a provider, right? And so there's not only the financial loss that can happen with not handling payment data correctly and having a problem, but there's the reputation cost as well. And either one are not good for a business.
So you find a lot of MSPs, well, you mentioned the point of managing that data. I guess we don't always think of it as like a life cycle, as data comes and then it gets outdated, and what do we do with it? Is that why you find a third party location is more helpful? What things can they do to help manage that life of their clients' data?
Sure. It's how are you receiving it? And a lot of times when we talk about a data fraud and payments, electronic payments fraud, a lot of times we think about the big headlines that we see in the news, a data breach, but there's a huge part of electronic payments fraud that is also very manual. A rogue employee that has access to authorization forms that were emailed or faxed in. Also notice I said emailed or faxed in. bad practice right there. How many people are doing that? You think about the fax machine that's receiving, or a printer or a copier. These have hard drives. There's images that are on them. How is that being destroyed after it leaves your office if it's on a lease? So, it's not just holding data, which should be held securely in a data vault. And as Connect Booster, there's certainly ways that we can help you guys mitigate those risks and create a good process in place to have access to the information, but not hold the information and not have it clear text available. A lot of it is just thinking through the process of how you're dealing with clients' payment information, how you're handling it, even to the point of think about what's on a check. Think about what you're receiving physically in the mail on a check, let alone having a conversation over the phone where you're talking about a credit card number, an expiration date, the security code, and the address of the cardholder, and you're clear speaking it. So there are just ways to put in a process where this stuff is not audible, you're not physically receiving it, and it's not being accessed in clear text format. And at Connect Booster, that's what we're all about, not just holding the data secure, but also how about the process to make sure receiving that information is secure, not just the storage of the information. Does that make sense?
It does. And, I was the editor of Business Solutions for a number of years. And one of the things that we ran into that you didn't hear a lot was what happens when MSPs, what is the downside if they get hacked or they're not following PCI compliance? We talked about the financial side, but what about to their own reputation? What things, have you seen happen to companies that aren't following the best practices?
Well, again, it's just most MSPs, are not operating on a national scale, right? It's regional. And unfortunately, bad news travels a lot faster than good news. And payments and just fraud in general and a breach of personal information, whether it's purely personal information or it's related to financial information, just think about the implications for a business, let alone an MSP or an MSSP whose focus is increasingly shifting towards not just IT services, but also helping keep those very businesses secure that they're serving. Right.
Sure.
It could very well, you're not welcome in the sales conversation anymore,
Yeah, the compromise to their reputation. I think I've seen a few cases, not just in the MSP space, but even in the business space, where they're handling sensitive data for their clients and they get hacked. Yeah, that's extremely hard to overcome. And I think the failure rate, I saw a study, and I don't have the exact stat, but the failure rate for a lot of the small businesses that something happens like that where they're compromised is pretty high.
Very high.
It's very
high. It is. Yep.
So it goes
and
beyond.
If it is
go ahead.
If it's a PCI breach, not only do you have the reputational costs, but the fees associated with the breach of cardholder data are just astronomical. They're astronomical. I mean, you're not talking even thousands of dollars. I mean, you're tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on the size of the breach. And think about dealing with that mess and then trying to operate your business at the same time. So let's get rid of just the fines. Let's get rid of the reputational costs. What about just the time of cleaning up the mess, and what is that going to do to your business when you're not focusing on it?
Sure. Even handling the press relations is something most people don't think about until all of a sudden the cameras show up out front.
All right.
And most aren't prepared for that, nor should they. So, I mean, the conversation obviously on this goes beyond cybersecurity, and that's one of the key focuses, obviously protecting and preventing breaches. But as you mentioned, it's the manual writing down of information, and even taking credit card receipts, things like that can all compromise. What are the other some of the other risks of poor payment process for MSP's clients? So I'm looking specifically on the client side.
Sure. Well, a lot of frustration, right? Lack of trust. If it was my security services, IT service provider that is the one that had the issue. Where does that leave me for the rest of the places, I make payments to that aren't as sophisticated as what these guys are? Let alone just dealing with personal fraud. Now, identity theft in and of itself, there's just a lot of there's just a lot of mess that goes. I can't remember exactly what the statistic is, but cleaning up your identity is not just a 2-week process if something really bad happens. This is something that can go on for months, and oftentimes it crops its head over the course of years. So the impact can be great, and not only can it be a frustrating process in the short term, but it can be a long-term frustrating process depending on the scale of personal data that they have combined with payment information on an individual or a business.
Makes perfect sense. So, and I know you mentioned earlier the checks are a concern, and many MSPs that I know still accept paper checks. Many companies accept paper checks, but whether it's their clients are afraid to share account information, prefer the banking paper trail, or just resist change, they tend to spend a lot of time each month writing out these payments and addressing and stamping envelopes and then running them to the post office, which, in the day of automation, it doesn't make as much sense, though many of us probably have things we do. But when businesses make a lot of payments each month, that process really can take up a lot of time. And the security concerns are really what I wanted to focus on. So what risks do these checks present to MSPs and well as their clients?
Well, if you really think about what's going on here in a check transaction and just the process of getting it to A to B, it's really funny. So as an IT service provider, MSP, MSSP, we are often very much so responsible for putting in processes to protect our clients from any type of a data breach or issue, as well as, putting together internal process to keep clients safe, training against phishing attempts, all of this. And then our clients are spending literally thousands of dollars with you as an MSP to put this process in place. And then how they're going to pay for this plan and this consultation is a clear text account number to their bank account, a clear text routing number. They're going to have their business name on there. They're going to have a business address. By the way, the person whose signature is on the signature card at the bank itself typically is signed off on that paper document. And then the security in this transaction is literally a paper envelope. And it's going to touch how many hands between point A and point B. That just in and of itself, when I think through it, is absolutely crazy, let alone just how easy it is to commit fraud with a check. Just think about this. All the information that I said is in that paper document, and whether someone grabbed it in the process or stole from the mailbox, or a rogue employee has access to the information, however they gain access to it, they now have that's like a wire transfer document to everything that we have on there. That's the ability to initiate a wire, right? They have all the drafting instructions. They could go online and order checks that look just like your checks, but put their name on it and your account number and routing number on it. So every check they write gets debited against your account. It's ridiculously simple to do. And compared to even 20 years ago, it's easier to do with technology than it ever was before, so it's actually even more dangerous. There's a lot of technology behind, people working towards having secure checks, but at the end of the day, there is a lot of check fraud that can happen. And we're putting this weird liability right in the middle of paying for all of the security plans that we've put together as an MSP and a client. And there's really no reason for it.
Certainly. And I know I do a lot with Boy Scouts and handle a lot of the checks coming in. We do get a lot of donations from businesses as well as individuals. And I am still amazed at how much information businesses still put on their checks. So, some people may be skeptical saying, yeah, it's not that, but they put all of this information you talked about that could be streamlined or eliminated even in those cases. But obviously there's better options than paper checks today.
Agreed.
But with that point, MSPs, I've heard the struggle is the businesses think ACH, credit card payments, are favoring vendors and others like MSPs themselves. So it takes away some of the business's controls. And that's true in some cases. But how can IT professionals convince their clients that making the switch from paper checks to automated payment is also in their own best interest? I think that's a tougher discussion for many to have.
Yeah, it can be, because you're right. People are going to be resistant, not only to change. I mean, that's pretty natural, but also if people feel like they are losing control, that's a very natural reaction. And I think, how we have combated that, not only for our clients, but also internally, we created our own processes really internally for our own businesses, not only for security, but aging AR. But at the end of the day, it's giving clients access. It's not taking away their access. And so an end customer portal, why does an electronic payment have to be less access for the end client? That's my question. I, in fact, want to give them access 24/7, 365 to see what's due, to add payment information to a secure vault, to look at invoice history, to look at what's going to come out recurring. I want to send them a notification 3 days before an automated payment's going to come out, or again, just allow them to view information, whether my business is open for business or not, on their own terms, by giving them access. And that really eliminates the fears. Why are people afraid of it's the feeling like they're losing control and lack of transparency. Well, let's give them control and let's give them transparency. And it typically eliminates the objection then to an electronic payment.
That makes sense. I know I've signed up for ACH in the past for, I can't remember exactly what it was. It might have been my insurance. And I remember that they would occasionally change the dates when they would take it out and not notify me. Or if they did notify me, right, it was very fine print. So I can understand some of the concerns with people. They're very conservative with who they want to give their bank information to, just for the fact of knowing when it's coming out and when information and when money is being moved.
Now, the ironic thing is, when you're sending a check, you're not only working to give them the exact same information that you would in an ACH, but who knows who else could potentially intercept that information between the two. You know what I mean? So even the ACH at its core, without the efficiencies of an end customer portal, is a better situation than a check in and of itself. But then when you add the ability to log in to understand your financial situation with your MSP or your payment methods on file or invoicing or when auto pay or what is going to auto pay, is going to be happening. Again, it's a no-brainer. It's all about how you frame up the conversation and how you're explaining that you're not taking away control. You're actually adding security. And the funny thing is, specifically as MSPs, that's what people are paying you for the security, for the advice, for your expertise. Exactly. So you are in a better position than any other business out there to say, no, guys, we don't do paper anymore. You've already paid me $5,000 a month for the last year to set this stuff up, or you've paid me a consulting fee, or you've bought hardware to, help monitor the network. We're not going to walk down this road. We're going to use a secure vault. They're just in the perfect position to be able to have that conversation. So aside from technology, if anyone is looking to help have that conversation, I'm more than happy to have a one-on-one phone call and just talk them through. Here's how we go about the process of getting people to understand. I mean, we've helped lots of people through that conversation. So
So it's a great security discussion, is what you're saying, and it lets
Absolutely.
if there's ever a time to step up and show, hey, here's the value of what we're providing, it's another option to do that, and it benefits both parties in that case.
Right. And your clients are so used to doing it. That's how they typically have paid for business to business transactions since its existence. They're not thinking about the liability until you lay it out there. And you will find giving them access, creating transparency, as well as letting them explain just how crazy it is to send that document through the mail, they're going to be on board.
Gotcha. So it sounds like MSPs really could benefit from stop accepting checks as a form of payment for the sake of their clients as well as their own interests. But can providers cut off long-standing customers right away? Can you make them go cold turkey? I guess what's the process and timelines that you've seen work best from your experience?
Yeah, great question. Well, in my mind, it's a twofold process. No, you can't just cut them off right away. There needs to be some communication, and that's understandable. There are new clients, and then there are existing clients. It's very easy to set precedent with brand new clients when they're coming on board because you're defining the relationship anyway, right? In the sales process, you're talking about what support's going to look like. You're going through what they're buying, whether that be recurring MSP services or a software solution, what have you. You're talking about SLAs. That getting paid process rolls right into the expectations of doing business together conversation in the sales process. And that's where it should happen. And you have them sign off and you add in your master services agreement language that talks about, automated recurring billing for your automated recurring services, and they sign off on it. I recommend against capturing check or credit card information on that document. You have them sign the language and then sign into, in my case, a secure portal like Connect Booster and add those payment methods on file. And that's part of the onboarding process. And that's for new clients. Existing clients, that's a little bit different story because those are the guys that are used to doing business with you one way, right? Those are the ones that are used to controlling their cash flow, and they like the check because of the control, although they're not thinking of the security concerns yet if you haven't had that conversation. Contract renewal date is the perfect time to have that conversation. And what we have found works best is typically around contract renewal. There's a discussion about rates and fees and an increase. I mean, dollars 3 years ago, on average, are not worth, they're not worth today what they were 3 years ago, right? And so whether that's a 5% increase, a 3% increase in the monthly contract upon contract renewal, and then start giving them options. So not only is this a time to talk about recurring automated payments for those recurring services, which is going to streamline your cash flow, it's also a time to talk about checks and ACH and versus credit card. And so you can frame up a conversation. There's going to be a 5% increase upon contract renewal. Get on board with recurring auto pay for your recurring monthly agreement with a credit card, and we'll knock that down to only a 3% increase. We'll see what we've done there is now we have a client on auto pay and we've covered the cost of the credit card by bumping that up, and now they're on recurring auto pay. Get on board with ACH and we'll waive that. I mean, to get someone's attention, oftentimes, unfortunately, you have to speak to their wallet. In contract renewal time, you're literally saying, if I take the same information that I'm giving you on a check and I do that electronically, which is going to make me more secure, and I get on auto pay because I'm going to pay for these services anyway, I won't see an increase? Yes, that is what I'm telling you. Show me where to sign up. Perfect. That is the most effective way to work with existing clients based on contract renewal, and then set the precedent on all new clients. And over the course of time, this isn't magic, this isn't something that happens overnight, but over the course of time, you have literally gone through your portfolio and you get to the point where you have a very large percentage of your recurring services revenue on recurring ACH coming in a predictable, secure manner. It's awesome.
That makes sense. The carrot, I think, approach always seems to work better, and it's more comfortable for the MSP community. I can't speak for everyone, but I think that the discussions that I've had with MSPs over late fees, I'm amazed at how many are afraid to implement late fees, even for clients that are like 60 days out, 90 days out, because they're afraid of losing customers. But if you're using the carrot up front, it just seems like an easy conversation to have. Not that you'll win every one of them,
right.
but yeah, the late fee part, I think it's uncomfortable when you talk financials a lot of times with clients, no matter if you're an MSP or a small business.
Agreed.
So you can avoid that if you're, I guess, doing that more positive approach that you're talking about. Makes perfect sense.
Well, we know the carrot's on a stick, but we don't have to use the stick.
Exactly.
Let's not do that.
Exactly. So Ryan, I'm pretty sure that I know both you and I have talked about Frank Abagnale before. He does a great discussion on similar security issues. And for those who are unfamiliar with Tom Hanks' movie Catch Me If You Can, he's the individual who became infamous as a teen for his expertise at check kiting and bank fraud and a variety of forms of deception. It's a great movie. I definitely recommend it, or you can read the book. But Frank was the keynote speaker for the ASCII Success Summit roadshows last year, and I was able to attend. I felt enlightened as well as somewhat scared just listening to him talk about the security risks. As a matter of fact, I made a few changes at my own personal accounts when I got back.
Right.
It's hard to believe, but people still include information such as driver's license and social security numbers on their checks. It baffles me these days. But what part of Frank's story do you think most applies to MSPs?
You know, a lot of it is dealing just with flat out the information that's out there based on having that on a paper document. That's number one. It seems really funny that we have, again, a check holder, their signature on a document with clear text routing, clear text account numbers, and all of their business information. And again, when you look at when Frank Abagnale was doing that, it's increasingly easier now with technology to do the same type of thing. And you had mentioned check kiting, for example. So to define that, that's actually opening accounts at, a couple more banks and using that float time of available funds to create fraudulent balances. And so again, it has actually become easier, not only because of technology, but also regulations for banking to make funds available sooner. Mm-hmm. It actually that the funding time is faster than the actual catching up of the potential fraud of that check being bad. And so it's check kiting is actually more dangerous now, again, than it was before, just because of the funds are actually being made available inside of another's bank account before they've actually truly become available for like a potential late return or the check kiting type of a scheme. So again, it's the clear text data with all of the supporting data that you have with the account data on a check, as well as the advances in technology and just access to how we can commit fraud is actually becoming easier than Frank Abagnale's day, not harder.
No, and even Frank his part of his story is how he adapted even to cybersecurity. He's doing a lot of things today, even looking at cryptocurrency and other things. So I guess my suggestion is for MSPs, if you get a chance, go up and check out some of his videos online, read his books. You'll learn a lot that may, I'm certain it will change some of the habits that you're doing right now, which is why I think it's crucial. But
it's eye-opening.
It is very eye-opening, especially when you realize I think he's in his 70s, maybe close to 80 at this point, and he knows more about cybersecurity than probably in 5 years of his criminal career than the rest of us will ever learn. But with that being said, too, security is always a bit of a moving target, Ryan. I know we've talked about it, but what payment handling processes do MSPs follow that are really no longer considered acceptable? What are you seeing out there?
I think it's just the Rolodex of payment information. A lot of times that's speaking to credit card. I mean, it's, the master spreadsheet. I know a lot of people are becoming more and more sophisticated, and there's more and more tools out there, to help secure data. So it's easier to find good tools to, have credit card information stored in, tools, obviously that are available to, hold and lock down payment information, are following PCI compliance rules. There's a lot of things in a sales conversation on my end where I say we can create further efficiencies, but from a pure security and data security standpoint, it's just, where is that information being held? What type of software are you using? Is it being held in an accounting package, unknowingly, potentially exposed through a data breach? And then tying back to, how are you dealing with physical information that you receive with payment information on it as well? That just manual fraud. What are happening to checks, once they've been received, if you're running them through a check scanner? Where are you putting those checks after the fact? So again, it's not just making sure that electronic data is being held securely. It is making sure that physical data is just not being, scanned and sitting on a hard drive somewhere or a scanner inside of the office, and unknowingly it leaves your office at some point down the road when that technology becomes outdated.
So it sounds like you talked about customer portals earlier, is the ability to kind of keep that information out of your MSP business and somewhat in control or more in control of your clients is a good way, because you avoid a lot of those issues. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, and think about it. We can do all that we want to keep our networks and our processes internally secure. But God forbid there's ever a data breach. Let's not have payment information even being quote unquote held securely inside of your environment be an issue. Why even hold it if you don't have to hold it, but can have secure access to it? You know what I mean? It doesn't
Sure.
make any sense. There's no reason for it. So leveraging a technology where you have ability to access it through software that uses tokens that then, is communicating with a data vault, which is how our technology works. Not even Connect Booster as a piece of software holds the data. Our clients don't hold the data. It's all being held in a PCI compliant payment gateway. If we really want to go down the weeds, they're SOC certified, PCI certified data centers, CenturyLink data centers. It's being held where it's supposed to be held, and you shouldn't want to have it.
Right. It sounds like it's protected like it should be protected too. So you reduce that liability
Exactly.
on both sides.
Yeah.
Everybody's happy. So great. So obviously we're running close on time here. It comes too quickly for me, but do you have any final thoughts or any other things you'd like to share with us before we sign off?
I think the biggest thing is to really think through the process of what you're asking your client to do when they're writing you a check. There are ways to very simply bolster up security around the transaction that your clients are paying you for a security solution, right? Let's make the transaction secure, I guess is what I'm trying to sum up. And it doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be difficult. And there are a whole host of other benefits that you can receive inside of your business by walking down this road. A lot of times when we think about security, we think about inconvenience. I think about logging into my email and, dual authentication and all these things. And yes, they're great, but it doesn't necessarily make it more convenient. Well, you can actually create a lot of automation and increased convenience for you and your clients by working with a product like ourselves, not only securing payment data, but just making cash flow come in easier, giving your clients access to information. This doesn't have to be a hard thing. And
Gotcha.
So that's my long-winded sign off there, Brian.
Excellent advice. I think we all love cash flow. That's a good place to leave it today. But so thank you, Ryan. But with our time closing here, I'd really like to thank Ryan Goodman from Connect Booster for sharing his expertise in secure payments and collections with us today. We appreciate all who tuned in to hear our discussion, and I encourage you to take a minute and check out the list of upcoming IoTSSA cybersecurity roadshows on the association's website. It's IoTSSA.com. Our next stop, for those of you listening, is April 26th in Edison, New Jersey, followed by Naperville, Illinois on June 12th, and we'll be traveling to Denver, Scottsdale, and Atlanta later in 2018 as well. So be sure to check out the dates. Connect Booster will be there. We'll be visiting in your neighborhood, and we'd love to have you register and attend. So once again, thanks for joining us today. We hope you have a fantastic and joy-filled day.